Hello, I'm Miss Thraves. I'm Key Stage 3 English Lead at Farlingaye, and I'm going to be reading you Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. I woke up when I heard Grandad opening the door to the garage. I remembered Mum and him talking about me the night before, and it made me feel bad. I didn't want people to talk about me. I wanted to be left alone. I climbed back into bed and pulled the duvet over me, but a few minutes later there was a knock at my door. "Morning, Dylan," said Grandad. "I'm going out fishing on the boat today if you'd like to come too." "I'm fine," I mumbled. "OK," said Grandad, "but if you change your mind, I'm leaving in about 20 minutes. I lay in bed wanting to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. What was I going to do all day? I'd broken my Xbox and Grandad had no TV. Mum had her laptop, but it was rubbish, and I didn't want to ask her to borrow it. Besides, Grandad didn't have any internet connection. There'd be nothing to do all day. All day. I screwed up my eyes and tried to sleep, but I felt more awake than ever. I couldn't face being stuck in the house with nothing to do. I couldn't face being stuck in the house with Mum on my case. So I got out of bed, pulled my jeans and a top on and went downstairs. "I'll come," I mumbled. "Excellent," said Grandad. Mum was sipping tea at the kitchen table. "I'll make some more sandwiches." Grandad smiled. "We might need a few extra. We'll be back on the evening tide." "Have you got your phone?" said Mum. I could hear the worry in her question. "Dylan broke his." "Can't be bothered with them," said Grandad. "I've got a VHF radio in the boat for emergencies." I followed Grandad along the path by the sea wall, all the way to the small harbour. The town wasn't one of those picture postcard tourist places. The houses were small and grey, and the harbour was a dark concrete wall around a small inlet of water. There were a few people out buying Sunday papers, and they all called good morning to Grandad. I pulled my hood up over my head and kept on walking. A man on the harbour wall nodded to Grandad. "Morning, Terry. See you got help today." "Hello, Evan. This is my grandson Dylan," said Grandad. "He's come to stay for a bit." The man nodded. "It's a good day to go out. Weather's set to stay." I looked out at the boats in the harbour. They were all sitting on the mud, leaning over on their keels. We've got about an hour before we can get out on this tide," said Grandad. "I'll go and get some fishing bait. You wait here." I watched him head off. I didn't want to be left alone and have to talk to people, but Grandad had gone. I walked to the end of the harbour and looked out along the marsh and the estuary up the river. I sat down and watched the tide creep in across the mud. It wasn't moving fast, swirling in through the harbour, pooling beneath the boats. Two black and white birds with orange beaks and feet ran along the tide line, stabbing into the mud with their long beaks. They flew off and spun away over the harbour wall towards the marsh. I watched them go. There were some people walking along the sea wall and a boy on a mountain bike who cycled in and out between them. I turned to walk back to the place where Grandad had left me, but the boy on the bike pulled up alongside me. I looked over at him quickly, then did a double take. The boy was a girl. "You must be Dylan," she said. She was tall. The bike seemed a bit too small for her. How did she know my name? I thought. She laughed as if she knew what I was thinking. "Everyone knows everyone and everything here," she laughed. "Fart and Mrs. Lewis in the post office will know it's you." I just stared at her. "I'm Elsie, by the way. Are you going to come to choir practice with your Grandad?" I shrugged. I couldn't think of anything to say. I didn't really want her to know anything else about me. Elsie pushed off on her bike. "See you around," she said. And then she was gone, pedalling along the harbour wall. The tide had crept into the harbour by the time Grandad got back, and the boats near the harbour entrance were already afloat. Another man carrying a fishing rod was walking close behind Grandad. He stopped and stared at us. "Morning, Alan," said Grandad. Alan looked over at me. "Don't want no trouble here, lad," he said. "I hear you were expelled from your last school." Grandad started packing things into a small wooden rowing boat. "Leave it, Alan," he said. "Nothing to do with you." "We'll know where to look if anything in town gets vandalised," Alan said. I pulled my hood up even higher. Elsie was right. everyone here knew all about me. Grandad ignored Alan and climbed into the rowing boat. "Hop in, Dylan," he said. I sat opposite Grandad as he rowed across the harbour. "That one's ours," he said. He pointed to a small blue motorboat that had a closed cabin and an open deck. It was named Nurse Jane. He pulled things onto her deck and tied the rowing boat up next to her. "Everything has to have a place in a boat," said Grandad, as he put the fish bait in a bucket by the rest of his fishing gear. He filled up the engine with fuel and handed me a life jacket. "I'm okay," I mumbled. "No choice," said Grandad. "You have to wear it." I looked up. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and there was no wind at all. "It's shallow where the river meets the sea," said Grandad. "The waves that roll in from the ocean can get big there at times." I pulled the life jacket on, and Grandad handed me the box with our lunch. "Go and put this in the cabin," he said. I ducked my head and went down into the small cosy cabin. There were 2 seats along the sides, which looked like they could be used for sleeping, and a table in the middle. I put the food under one of the benches, and by the time I got back up on deck, Grandad had started up the engine and was steering out of the harbour into the estuary, towards the wide open sea.